Everybody, welcome along to episode 129 of Percussion Discussion Podcast. Before we get into it, I'd like to ask you all to please check out all of our social media. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, and of course our world famous YouTube channel, where you can find all of our conversations, past and present, and these will have the video to accompany them. So you can see what we're doing as well as hear what we're doing. If you'd rather listen on the go, then all of the podcasts, all the conversations, I should say, are available in podcast form. And these are free to download from your favorite podcast provider. So if that's your thing, then do that. Enjoy it on the go, wherever you listen to your podcasts. Please rate and review if you can. It helps other like-minded drummers find us and hopefully enjoy what we do here at Percussion Discussion. On to today's guest, a fabulous British drummer. He's played for some remarkable people, Lorena McKennitt, Clara Ponty, Goldfrapp, Hugh Cornwell, Black Box, Miles Kane, Peter Gabriel. The list goes on and on and on. A wonderful guy and a wonderful musician. It gives me great pleasure to welcome the fabulous Rob Bryan.
All right, Matty, no problem, man. It's good to meet you here.
Likewise. I really appreciate it. Happy New Year and all that. That won't make any sense to anybody watching this, 5 years down the line, but it is January the 3rd. So what's happening at the moment? Up to anything exciting?
Yeah, there's always something that I'm up to, Matty. I'm always doing something. I'm preparing some masterclasses with Gary Astridge, which we'll talk about at some point, I know. Yes. I'm also doing a Siouxsie Sioux masterclass because I've been playing with Siouxsie since she left the Banshees. Well, she left the Banshees many years ago, but then she reformed or wanted to get a project together, but not as the Banshees. And her and Budgie had split, so it was a little bit awkward. So it just became Siouxsie Sioux. So from 2006 to the present day, I've been working with her, and we're looking at doing a new album. I'm off touring with Lorena McKennitt again in the summer. Wow. I'm also doing some recordings with Chris Hughes. Chris Hughes famously was one of the two drummers in Adam and the Ants back in the day. He was one of the massive
former guest on the show.
There you go. So Chris, I'm working with Chris. We're doing some projects together.
Amazing.
We're doing that. So, and there's another little project of musos. So I live in the sort of Bath, Bristol area, and a lot of musos around here are busy like me, touring and recording. Every now and again we get together and we've got a project called Little Men. Not that we're little men, but it's just the band leader, his mum who passed away a few years ago, used to draw these little men when they were kids. And he said, can I call it that? And we were like, yeah, of course. It's a lovely thing. So we go off and do gigs. We've just done a new album. I've produced it. And we're doing some local gigs in the area. So, up until August, Matty, my diary is pretty much full on, which as a musician is this day and age is a blessing.
That's the dream, isn't it? I'm sure there's many who have kind of holes all over the place, but if you're good till August, and then that gives you a chance to fill up the latter part of the year, perfect.
Exactly. There'll be some double booking that probably will come in, and you always think, oh no, but the first one in the book is the one that gets the gig. That's the musician code. But yeah, looking at the latter end of the year is my next thing, and there'll be more masterclasses with DW and Vulcan coming in and things like that, and as well as my private teaching. So yeah, lots going on. I probably missed some things as well, but lots going on.
Well, you're big on the education thing, aren't you? You see your name crop up doing different things all over the country, and into Europe as well. And is that something that you always wanted to do, as well as the playing, gigging, and recording side of things?
Yeah, I've always enjoyed it. I realised that early on in the day it was a good way to keep yourself afloat financially in between the touring and the gigs. So I worked in some local schools, and then I went up to Bath University, and then into BIM in Bristol, and along the way, I wasn't just doing it for the money. I actually enjoyed it. I enjoyed the experience of my father, who taught me. Though sometimes, you know what dads are like, they could be a little bit kind of heavy-handed with their teaching, like, come on, do this, or I'll take your records away, or whatever, or stop playing to records, play the rudiments to the metronome, but I love the process. And I've always loved passing information on. And as you well know yourself, drummers are I think, the only instrumentalists really that really share information with each other without being too guarded. Hence, we do more drum clinics than anyone else. The gags of guitarists sat next to each other saying, what's that lick? And they go, oh, you better find it for yourself. I had to, and all that nonsense. Same as sax players. It's just like, oh God, please. Whereas drummers will sit in a line and just share info, and you could be sat next to a world famous guy or woman, and they'll pass it down. And I just love that. So this constant share of information. And when I get a eureka moment when I'm playing and practicing, I love to share that. So I think there's nothing better than passing this knowledge on, because what's the good of keeping it to yourself? There's no enjoyment in that. You got to let these things go and share it with the world. I think it's a very kind of hippie outlook, but that's kind of how I feel about it. I think it's very important to do that, and thank God we do. So yes, education as long as alongside the playing has always been a massive deal for me. Yeah. Always.
And I mean that's incredible. And you just say drummers, we know what drummers are like. Everybody shares everything, Can I use your kit share? I mean, how many guitarists would say, yeah, use my rig, my pedal setup's there. Just go for it. It'd never in a million years happen, would it? It'd be nice to think it was somewhere, but I don't know of a person or a place where it would happen. But it is important that we share the information and stuff, and it happens, thankfully. And there's a lot of things going on. And I know I'm not trying to put down other musicians, but you don't tend to see things like they may exist, but clinics and masterclasses for other instruments. Is it something that happened? Have you seen anything like that?
Yeah, it does happen. Yeah, it does happen, but nowhere near, Matty, on the scale that we do it.
Yeah.
And as we were just saying about being a performer, keeping your calendar full. Sometimes when people are putting on these events, they know they're going to lose money sometimes because they might not get the footfall of people coming in, but they still do it. Shops still do it. Music schools, that's kind of funded, I guess. But, people still feel the need to put them on. Drummers feel the need to share it. And I think that's brilliant. So I was talking to Steve White once, and he was saying he would turn up at school sometimes. There'd be 12 kids there, but it didn't mind. He didn't care, because the next one he does will be 250 people there, all wanting his autograph. And that's the ups and downs of doing it. But you still drive home thinking somebody in that room has got some information today, and I've shared something that I've learned that I got from my dad or from yourself or from anybody. Because I always say to my students, and they think it's cheesy, but every day's a school day. I'm learning all the time. I've been playing since I was 9, but even working with Chris Hughes just before Christmas again, there was stuff I was learning about his producing process, and just as is the way the interplay with him and the other musicians. It was just just speaking to them, not necessarily musically. I just learned so much. It's every day's a school day. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, let's talk about working with Chris. That must be fun. Are you working with him? Is he the other side of the glass, or is he working with you as a player as well?
He's the other side of the glass, and
okay.
You know what it's like when you got a drummer on and a producer and a multi-instrumentalist, but who plays your instrument on the other side of the glass. And after every take, he would open the door, and I would hear him. It was at his studio, his house. I have my headphones on. I can see through the glass, across the stairway, across into the studio. And every now and again, of course, the mic's live in the room, and they're saying, "Try this, Rob," and I'll do something. And when it was right, you'd just say, "I'm coming in," and I'll see him go through the glass, come across the stairway and in, and he'd say, "Come on, give me a hug." And after every take, we had a hug, and his positivity and just his force, his aura is amazing to be around. And we've all been around people like that, and we sense it. And the minute it starts to happen, it's just a glow between everybody. And it was just wonderful. And every now and again, he would say, "Right, okay, I think, Rob, we need you to pick it up here. We need you to do this. But this bit is great. We're going to nab everything anyway because it's to click. But, could you just give us a little bit of that? Or could you just play straight for this amount of time?" And it was just like, yes, I can do all of this. But it was just a really good process working with somebody like that. There was no like, "Rob, could I just show you what to do? Or would you do it like this for me?" It just worked really well. And by the end of it, it was like, we're going to work more in 2024. We're going to do loads more, production wise and drumming wise. It was, you can't hope for anything better than that, Matty, can you? I mean, that's just, you can't buy that. It's, it's amazing.
He has a lovely way with words as well. I know a couple of times during our conversation we had, he described something musically as it had a great temperature to it. And I thought, yeah, that's really nice. That I love the way certain things he says, and it's like, yeah, he knows what he's talking about.
Definitely. Working with a lot of different engineers and producers and MDs, I found that once you learn your instrument and the terminologies and everything for the instrument and for music in general, styles and genres, and all the jargon, I found that I was drawn to people that can visualize music as colors and as landscape. So someone like Chris, like you rightly say, he'll say the temperature was great, but I need you to play, make it sound like it's expansive. Imagine you looking over the Grand Canyon. And some people look at you and go, what's that mean? And I get that. Sometimes you have to be a bit more kind of, well, literal. It's like this. But I react well to that kind of language. So someone sees that, I think, yes, I know exactly what you mean. Broader strokes, just don't know fills, keep it open, maybe play a bit harder. Yeah, I get what you mean. And equally, it could be, could you sound a little bit melancholic, a bit sadder? Think of blue colors. Don't think of so happy. And that just works for me. And Chris, like you say, is one of those that can just say something like that, and I'm like, run the tape. I'm on it. I love that. Again, it's just the way that I feel music. As I say, once I've learned all the terminology, that's fine. And I try to say this to my students. Obviously, they need to learn terminology and what things are called and that. But once that's done, kind of put it to one side and feel music as a happening, as an event, rather than a sequence of notes. But that, I know that's a whole other thing. But I think that's important, and it's certainly, for me, it's been something that's really helped me in my playing and to get my music, drumming, to speak on people's music, which is why I do a lot of sessions. I'd like to think. I think that's what it is. Someone said to me once that you frame my music really nicely. You understand what I'm saying, and you put a frame on it. And thank you. And I just thought that was one of the nicest things anyone's ever
ultimate
said.
compliment.
Yeah,
really is.
Yeah,
it really is.
That was lovely, and it was just like, wow, thank you.
And
I think it was Lorena McKenna. I can't remember, but it was an artist that I thought, wow, I wasn't expecting that to be said. So yeah, there's like a nice thing.
And this is why your diary is full till August. Simple as.
I guess so. And the fact that, Matty, I love all styles of music, and I love playing all styles of music. There's some things that people aren't going to hire me for. They're not going to hire me for death metal, blast beat or grime or something. I know that. And I'm nowhere, I'm not 53. I'm not trying to compete with the guys and gals doing that. That's a whole nother thing. But for music, for most other styles, I like, and through the records and stuff like CDs, I'm like, yeah, my head's just constantly flicking through. It's like an A to Z of music, as I say, genreless. It's just whatever I need, the tools for the job. So yeah, that's hopefully why people are employing me. It's hard to think of yourself, but yeah, maybe that's it. Yeah.
But do you really want to be playing death metal? If it's something you've never been involved in. One thing I struggle with, and I'm sure you don't, because you're a thoroughly professional chap. I struggle playing music I don't really like.
Right.
I kind of, it's like, oh, maybe you should have booked somebody else for this gig. It's not really my thing. I don't know. Have you been in that situation?
Yeah, I have. And I did a little video the other day on my channel about referencing, and we're human beings. Of course, there are some things that just aren't going to say it. It's like if you're doing a job and someone comes into the office or the workplace, the garage, wherever you work, I don't know, whatever, and you don't like them, and it's a bit of a weird situation, but you still have to work with them. You kind of make it work. And I think I'm very much like I've said to people, the golden retriever of the band. I'll be happy with everyone and try and make everyone happy with me. Do you know what I mean? I'm not going to be the Alsatian who's a bit spiky, and like, oh, I'm not going to be that guy. I think drummers are very much like goalkeepers. We keep everyone happy. We keep everything safe. Yeah, I find that I have done it, but I've tried to make the best of the situation, basically. And I've always learned something. As I say, every day's a school day. Learning something from the music, from the sort of people you work with. Maybe it'd be good and it could be bad, but there's something to be gotten from it. And I always tell myself, once you've walked away, you don't have to go back.
Yeah.
So once you've done it and you've done a good job and everyone's happy, then job done. Then you can move on and think, right, I'll just chalk that up to don't like that scene, those kind of people particularly. I can suss that out now. I don't like the music, or I don't like working with that certain engineer or producer, or this situation. it feels uncomfortable, but you move on. So it's learning process.
But equally, you haven't burnt any bridges either. You know, you can go back quite happily should you need to or want to.
Exactly. And I always say to all my students, no matter what the situation is, always do the gig, meet the people, make the contacts, move on. You never know where one of those guys or gals might ring you again later on and say, hey, man, remember me 2 years ago on that gig? I wanted to come and do this. And you're like, blimey, I'm glad I met them, you know.
Yeah.
And I know it sounds like a fairy tale. I say to my students, and you're going to sit there going, oh, I bet it does. But it really does. You've just got to keep, you know, putting those tentacles out to different people, different social, musical circles, and things start to come back. And along that thread, as long as you, I always say to them, do a good job, you're there on time, do the right thing, blah, 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 do what you should do, then all the rest of it will come together. Yeah. You know, if you don't do a good job, then you can be the nicest person in the world. But if you're no good at the job, you've still got to be good at your job. Still got to practice, and you know, it's one of those things. But it's a lot, as you know, it's a lot of work. You know, making those contacts, keeping practicing, keeping going. And a lot of people burn out, and I get it. I understand why. I mean, I've had moments where I've been like, oh, really? But for me, it was like my life, so I keep going.
Yeah,
always keep going.
Well, obviously, you've mentioned quite a few things already, and one thing in particular is the Siouxsie Sioux gig. Now, obviously, when you've played Banshees material, Budgie's been on the show as well, and Budgie is a pretty unique guy, pretty unique drummer, a lovely chap.
He's lovely, yes.
He's left a real legacy of interesting drum parts. How did you find playing that? Was it challenging, or was it just fun?
All of that. It was all of that. I mean, challenging. Challenging to start with, because as you well know, the drumming isn't always just straight ahead. A lot of songs are straight ahead because they need to be. But when he could get involved and play more syncopated, contrapuntal things, he did. And no one in the band said no. And because talking to Siouxsie a lot, and there's a lot we could talk about with Sue, you know, she saw the whole punk movement as an art movement. You know, she said, I was fed up of seeing on the news at 6 and the news at 10, you know, oh, Rastas and, you know, punks are fighting again. Oh, this culture is terrible. She said that was one thing that they wanted to show. They didn't talk about the punk poetry, the punk art, you know, the clothing, you know, the music. We were trying to do like a beatniks, but we looked a bit more frightening than a beatnik. But it was an art movement. And when you suddenly get into that, so I don't know how old you are, Matty, but I remember seeing those fights on TV, and it used to scare the life out of me. And if I'd see punks walking around the street, I'd be scared, but because they sold this image to you. Anyway, so having that sort of idea that it was an art band, even though it was a punk style, you know, all of a sudden, all the stupid stuff that society was telling me went away. And I start looking at these parts, and they're quite they're very progressive, a lot of them.
Yeah.
And the way he played it, the way he handled some things, whether it was because he could only do it that way or because it felt better, it doesn't matter. But I had to find a way that I could play it. So I said to Sue, I'm always going to play them authentically, not watching the videos, not copycat, but I'm going to play the same part. But if he was playing, because he had 2 rack toms above his bass drum here, I'm not comfortable with that. So I had 2 rack toms on my bass drum. I said, I'm not going to reach up to this one. I'm going to play a paradiddle if it's a 16th note to go up to this one. She said, well, whatever. But I was that sort of into it. I wanted every little bit of it to be right. Yeah. The last thing I wanted was YouTube comments from fans going, who's this muso drummer who's come in and wrecked our songs by trying to play them in 7, or, you know. I wanted to be authentic. I wanted to respect Budgie's legacy, the Banshees legacy, and the fans. And I thought that was the best way to do it. And I've got a lot of gigs because I've got that work ethic. I'm not going to come in and say, I'm Rob Bryan playing your music. I'm playing your music as Rob Bryan. You know, I'm not, it's not my name isn't on the theatre, yours is. Yeah. So I'll come and do what I need to do. And I scored them all out, Matty. I scored every single thing out because I was really like, not one fan is going to pick up that I don't do something. And then as the rehearsals progressed, Siouxsie would sort of turn around from the mic and say, hey, can you give me a da-da-ching there? And I'll say, well, it's not really on the record. She goes, yeah, but it's live. Give us a bit more feeling. You know, on the album version or single, it was nice just to go in without a crash or something. But when we're playing live, we need a bit more. So I was given that sort of freedom at times. So it's never like, you know, it's always dagga dagga boom or something that fits the music. So for me, it was a real learning process, but through the education thing, as I say, learning stuff, I loved it. I loved getting inside it, and I love the fact that every run through we do of a set, she would turn around to various band members, like, oh yeah, on this and that, and the manager as well, Doug, would be very hot on that. And then the comments to me got less, less, less,
Yeah.
and less. So I was like, right, I'm finally in control. Way before the tour started, I'm in control of this now. I had electronics to deal with as well. There's a lot going on. I was a younger man. It was easier to get my head around it all. There was trigger clicks all over the place and pads and loops to play with, and oh dear, it was great. But once I had that in gear, it was that goalkeeper thing again. It was like, right, now let's look after the bass player. Let's look after her, of course, the guitarist. And once I've got that in place, it's more a case of like, hey, we need to do this on that bit. And I go, oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. And if anybody got lost, I would say, don't worry, just keep going. I'm going to cue you back in. Just look at me and I'll give you a cue, or I'll count you down. So I became like this goalkeeper figure again, that I was just taking, and I wasn't the MD at all, but I felt a little bit like I was an MD.
Unofficial MD.
Exactly, but I would never step on Steve's toes because Steve's a legend, you know.
Sure.
But sometimes when Steve was playing, he was in his own guitar play, so he too, if he was having issues, or you know what it's like, big festivals, you don't get a sound check, you're straight on in ears, and you're playing. It's like, oh god. Anyway, so it was incredible. It was a lovely experience. Of course, you know, not everyone's happy. We still get comments now of, you're not the Banshees, and that's fine. We don't claim to be. It's called Siouxsie now.
Yeah.
It's not the Banshees, but coming out again this year, last year now, obviously 2023, the amount of people that were like, hey, it's you guys again, great to see you back, you know, thanks for looking after our queen, you know, you do a great job. It's just nice. We've finally been accepted into the hearts of the fans generally, which is lovely, you know, and it's part of a legacy. Part of a legacy.
I mean, let's be honest, the Banshees are never going to be the Banshees because, well, you know, it's just not simple as for various reasons, which we're not going to go into, but it's just, it can never be the same, can it? But they should be grateful that it's going out in a form or other, you know.
And that's the exact comment, Matty, that comes on a YouTube. Not that I look at very many, but every now and again we can't help it. We look at what people have said, and that's the exact comment that most people say afterwards when someone says, "Oh, not the Banshees, it should be," and then someone comes in and writes exactly what you just said. You should be happy she's out doing it in any shape or form, and these guys are doing their best to reproduce it the best they can. And of course, the Banshees were a very much a live band. You know, I don't think they did much to click or to backings and stuff like that back in the day. So of course, now with the technology we've got, we go out and the sound that we produce on those Banshee songs, we can play all those extra parts that couldn't be played before. Now, I know they had auxiliary members in the 90s, more synth players, which was great. But now, of course, we don't need that. We could go out as a 5-piece band and everything else is on track. So it sounds massive. So songs that should sound like, you know, doom, you know, doomsday's coming, they do sound like that because we've got all the technology. So we always say we'd love to stand in the audience and watch it to see the noise that we're making, because it's formidable sound that we're bringing, you know.
Oh, honestly, it's fantastic stuff, and it's fantastic to hear you talk about this as well. But you talked before about, you know, the negative comments, and it reminds me, I had Christian Eigner was on from Depeche Mode.
Oh, yeah.
Christian, great drummer. He was talking about the hate he received when they decided they were going to go out with live drums, you know, and it was horrendous, some of the stuff people were saying. And I, for one, I think it improves the band on a live, you know, I love to see a drummer. Of course I do. Who doesn't, you know?
Agreed. Yeah, agreed. Hands down.
Yeah, you know, these people need to get a grip and just be grateful that they're still going, and, you know.
Yeah, it's kind of, I don't want to say sad, because that sounds patronizing. I don't mean they're sad. It's just kind of sad that someone has to feel that way. I'm not saying they are, as I say. I just think it's a very strange state of mind. You know, it's like you can get it anywhere with Beatle fans. You can get it. I was talking to Gary Newman's been on a lot of the gigs with us, on a lot of the festivals we did this year, and he's a hero of mine. You know, and he gets, speaking to him, he gets very uptight that people just want to hear our friends Electric and Cars all the time. Now it's obvious he knows why. And for those 4 years, from like 78 to 81, he was a massive star. So of course everything else kind of went downhill a little bit. You know, but for him, it's like, people should hear me now. This is what I am now. I'll still do those songs, but they're going to sound like I am now. I'm not going to go back and make them sound like 1979. And most fans like me will go, yeah, okay, I get it. I'm not into a lot of the newer stuff personally, but I still respect that he's moving on with a bigger sound, and that's cool. But I think, for some people, they're stuck in that point and they want it to be Top of the Pops 1979 again. And I get it as a music fan myself. I do get it. I'd like to have been around in the 70s to see Deep Purple. I'd like to have been around in the 60s to see the Stones and the Beatles and people. It would have been awesome, but it's never going to happen. So just be thankful we've got the records, and whoever's out there still doing it, go and enjoy it and make the best of what you got.
It's like somebody saying, well, I like your two oldest children, but your younger kids, I'm not really keen on, But to you, they're equally as important, and you love them to bits. But it's like, you see these 5 kids here now. I don't like those.
That's a really good way of putting
these
it.
2 older ones are all right. Don't bring the little.
Yeah, exactly. It seems daft to me, and of course now I've been involved in that since 2006, and there are times in the early days it did affect me a little bit. Didn't make me angry or anything. I just, again, thought it was like, felt sorry for them feeling so negative when they should really be thinking, Siouxsie's on tour? Bloody hell, let's go and see it. This is great. Instead of, oh, here we go. But equally, can I just say that I think it's also important that the musicians in a band, when you're with somebody like that, and like when I saw Gary Newman a few times when he was on before us at festivals, the band give it some. They're into it. Now, there's nothing worse. I know it depends on what sort of gig, Matty, but there's nothing worse when you see a bunch of musos, good or bad, but not into the music, and the artist is giving it their thing, or whether they're a guitarist or whoever it is, but the band are just going through the numbers. I find that very hard to watch.
Yeah.
I understand why they might not be into it or whatever, but don't do the gig.
Yeah.
There's nothing worse. So when we play with Siouxsie, we don't sort of go over the top, and we develop our own characters. And I'm not going to try and do the Budgie thing with the hair and all that. I did the red stripe, but that was it. And Budgie didn't even do that. That was a Gary Newman steal. I took that from Gary Newman from 1980. But all of us have got our personalities, but we don't go out there and think, yeah, we're like a 70s, late 70s punk band, because we're not. So we just go and give it our thing. There are times when we're a bit out. There are times when we're a bit kind of more, but we just follow the music. And she really likes that. No one's trying to be over the top. And it's like, oh, look at that guy. What's he doing? Like, everyone look at me. It's about Siouxsie. So we respect that.
Yeah, you don't want to tread on her toes, do you? Let's be honest,
And I know a lot of people who are, again, God, saying no names, but people who've worked with big artists and kind of bummed out the gig because they've been doing too much or overplaying. And that goes back to what I said before. I would never overplay. I play, if anything, I play less.
Yeah.
I want her to turn around, or the MD to say, come on, give us a bit more. If you want to do a bit more around the toms on this, do so. Just because it wasn't on the record, there was a reason for that. But now it's 2023 or 2022, whatever, whenever it was, you crack on. So yeah.
And as far as a new album goes, I guess it's carte blanche pretty much for you. Within reason, obviously, you've got to agree what you're doing, but it must be nice to just put your own stamp on things as well, and say, well, this is me now. This is 100% me. I don't have to respect anything that's gone before me, because there's nothing to compare it to now.
Exactly. With Kenny Morrison, with Budgie's drumming, and Clive Deemer, who's a good friend of mine. You may have had him on the show. I
haven't actually.
You should do. He's a great guy. I mean, he played on the 2006 album Manta Ray, which started the whole thing off with me joining them. So yeah, I respect that, those guys. But as you say, this could be the time for me to take what they've given into the project and into the legacy, which I keep saying the legacy, which it is.
Yes.
Then I can add to that. Again, doesn't mean I'm going to go nuts on it. It just means that I can have some input. And Siouxsie's really into. And obviously with Budgie, singers, I think anyway, singers and vocalists have got, I say this to everybody because I think it's true. There's a real kinsmanship between the two things, because as far as I'm concerned, they're the oldest instruments. Now I know piano, harpsichord and all that is old, but Stone Age man and woman people were singing and hitting things before they did anything else. So as far as I'm concerned, there's always going to be that closeness between a singer, it doesn't have to be a relationship, I know, but a musical relationship between the two, which I think is brilliant. So me and Siouxsie have a really good connection musically, and she will sort of sometimes at sound checks, which my girlfriend noticed actually, she sometimes look at me for a musical choice instead of the MD, which is like, don't ask me, ask Steve. But she'll come to the drum riser, and during gigs she'll come up and she'll get a bit of water and she'll look at me and say, all right, everything, and that's like, yeah, And she'll make, or she'll equally, if she's having a good time, she'll be sort of doing some voguing. She'll turn to me and she'll be making a stupid face to make me laugh, and then she'll be turning to the crowd doing her thing again. But to me, she's sort of going, oh. It's brilliant. It's just great. But that singer drum relationship is, and in all the projects, the different people I've worked with that haven't just been sessions, which have been for a day or 2 days, like the Simple Minds thing, I never really got to bond with Jim Kerr ever. He just used to come in at Real World, which is Peter Gabriel's studio down the road, which is 10 minutes from me. And he used to have his sandwiches that the people in the kitchen made him. And he'd go off walking around the lovely mountains of Box and the hillsides, and he'd say, "Oh, have a good day," and he'd be gone, and I never got to see him. But he did once look over my shoulder because I had the music. Because as I said, I always write the music out. I put little ideas underneath of grooves I could play, fills I could play. They're just there if I get when I'm listening to the track, just to inspire me in case they say, "What would you do?" And I write these things down. And he leant over my shoulder. He went, and I can't do the accent, but he said, "Oh, you're a proper musician." And I looked at him and said, "What do you mean?" He said, "You're writing things down." And I went, "Oh, right, yeah." I said, "Well, it's just ideas." He was like, "Yeah, cool." And he sort of walked away. I was like, "Jim Kerr." I said it was cool. I wrote things
I'll take it.
If you know what, people always say to me, you get so excited still. And I'm still that 15-year-old kid I was watching Live Aid for someone like that. When I worked with Peter Gabriel, I'm still the kid I was when I saw him do the Sledgehammer video in '86 for the first time. And when I met Gary Newman, God, they didn't even tell me I was meeting him. I was a bit tipsy after a gig, and they bass player put his arm around me and said, "Come on." It's after we did this gig in front of 30,000 people in Pasadena, which was amazing. That's a whole nother story. But and he said, "Come on." And I was coming out with my little beer. I go, "Oh, what a great night, Joe." And he said, "Yeah." And then he pushed me into this crowd of people. And I turned around and there's Gary Newman, But I'm always young and always sort of a bit immature when I meet these people, not to them, but inside I'm like, "Oh, Gary Newman." Same with drummers.
Nice, though? Isn't that nice? That's amazing.
Well, I think so. I never give him the big star thing, like, "Oh, I love you." I don't do that. But inside, I'm still that little kid. And same every time I get near a drum kit, I'm still that little kid that wants to go, "Oh, that's good, but what does that do?" Ooh. That's never really gone. Hence why I'm still doing it at 53,
Youthful enthusiasm.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love it. And I try and pass that on to my students and to other musicians I work with, even at the lowest ebb, I try to be that person that says, "This is going to be great. All right, everything's gone wrong, but look, we're going to go out and play some music now. This is what we're good at. We're going to have some fun doing this. Well, let's go and record that track. It's been difficult, but let's go and do it. We've got it now. It's on the run. Let's go and run the tape, or get Logic working, and let's go. Let's do it. Come on." Yeah. That's kind of my...
I love it. Well, look, you also mentioned way back at the start of our chat about something with Gary Astridge. Now, this is I'm looking forward to hearing a little bit of information about this, because we're meeting up in just over a month.
We are.
You're doing a tour, and now I'm trying to get the title right. Is it The Legendary Drums and Drumming of a Star? So it's kind of basically, would you call it a tribute, almost a tribute evening to Ringo Starr, with obviously yourself and Gary Astridge?
It's really interesting because there's so many different sides to it. And when we were sitting down to sort it out, we found it really difficult to kind of put it into a certain home. But the thing is, for drummers, the legacy, like Bonham, like any great drummer, is important. And obviously, John Bonham would have heard some Beatle records and stuff back in the day. So there'd be a little bit in there. He doesn't have to like every bit of it, but you can't help it through osmosis. We all get a bit of it. So it's like looking not just obviously of the Beatle legacy, which stands for itself and will go long after we're, away, wherever we're going. It's kind of looking at Ringo's approach to the drums, from rock and roll, from what he learned from jazz drumming that he listened to when he was younger, all those things, and just kind of putting it, so it's not really a lecture either, but it's educational, but it's quite fun because it's quite hands-on as well. Gary will be going, "What does that sound like? Could you just show what that would be like?" and give us the real volume that he was playing in the studio. Not the bits where they're miming and doing this, but the proper, and just things like that. It's all kind of, we can spark off each other. So I'll be playing all the patterns and explaining where they came from and exactly how it was played on the drums and how that influenced other drummers, and how it influences me in the studio. Because even when I was with Chris the other day, he was saying, that Ringo thing, and it was almost like, here we go again, because that's one of the drummers, along with Gad, Porcaro, and a few people, Mick Fleetwood.
A
Their
staple name, a staple.
Absolutely, and Bonham, of course. But drummers that even engineers and producers will say, "I don't play drums, but you know that thing that Copeland does," and you say, "Okay, yeah, cue it up, let me hear it." Or sometimes with Ringo, it's like, "Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. You know, no matter how obscure the track is, I know what you're getting at, and it's like this." So it's coming from that approach, and of course, Gary, his right hand man. So Gary deals with him like we're talking now, but we're face to face. He's talking with Ringo all in his home in LA all of the time, and he's looking after all the Beatles gear. So anybody who's got any questions about that, Gary can take care of, and he'll talk you through all the different elements of the drum sets. You know, and I've got the playing aspect and the love of Ringo's drumming the Beatles, but also, you know, I've made it clear that it's not just some sort of I'm not going to put the wig on and go woo and play. This isn't about that. It's about how important. Well, I could do.
No,
it's about how
leave the wig.
his drumming, how important his drumming has been to people that aren't just drummers, but to producers, engineers, musicians in general. Again, as I say, they don't play drums, but they remember Tomorrow Never Knows or Come Together or whatever it may be. They're the obvious ones. But it's like he's actually in the, you know, in the zeitgeist. He's there. You know, he's not a Gab, he's not a Buddy Rich, he's not a Pert, but more importantly than that, he's been involved in all of the music making process throughout all the years. You know, so it is a kind of tough one to say to people. But if you're a drum fan, if you're a music Beatle fan, if you're a producer engineer and you want to know a little bit more about drumming and the miking techniques and things like that, we'll be talking about all of that kind of thing. So it's quite kind of a full-on event. You know, there's lots of different approaches, and it's open to all of those people and those ideas. So
might we expect a tea towel or two?
You're gonna have a tea towel or two, yeah. And actually, I don't know if I'm allowed to share this, but we may find out eventually, and finally, not eventually, but finally, how Come Together was actually played, because everyone plays it wrong.
Well, everyone has an opinion on it as well, and it's who do you go to for the, you know, where is the correct? It's
well, I'll tell you. Well, I'll tell you, the only person who knows is well, I don't know, but Gary knows,
yeah,
because Gary set that Let It Be kit up that's on that Get Back documentary that's come out.
Is this the Maple?
Yeah,
yeah,
and yeah, he's explained it. Now I need to ask him. I'll ask him today before we talk if we're allowed to share it. But he saw Ringo play it when he first unpacked that kit when it came to LA, and he turned around and saw Ringo play it, and he said for one moment, if you could stop time, you know, it'd be like, oh my God, that's how it's played. And we were all coming up the toms and all that, getting it all wrong. It's none of that. When you find out what it is, I shared it with Chris Hughes. He was like, it's so limmin simple. I was like, yes, well, it is, but none of us thought of it, you know.
Is my opinion. We don't tell them, but tell them on the gigs. Get the tickets. Okay. Get the tickets sold.
Yes. Yeah, you're not going to share no spoilers. Get your tickets and come and find out.
It's going to be a fascinating event, and it's obviously I'm putting when's the date of mine? I think it's Monday the 5th of February. So
yes,
this is 2024. In case you're watching in 10 years, it's been and gone. And yeah, so you know, come along and support it if you're in the area. I think it's about 7 or 8 dates you're doing, Rob. Is that right?
We have got 7 or 8 dates now. Yeah. It's really growing. You know, Sticky involved. Loads of people are involved in it. And I think Gary's going to come back. I think we're going to do more.
Good.
You know, because it's when they approached me about it, I was really proud and pleased that they asked me. You know, Gary asked me to be involved in it. Until I just thought, there's nothing like this. I mean, I know Matt Green does a tribute to Bonham, which is a similar thing. You know, and the fact that you've got me like Matt who loves Bonham, and of course I love Bonham too, but you know, Ringo, so I'm the drummer, but to have Gary there as well, you know, as someone that I look and think, God, you've actually touched the man. You know, you've been near him, you've shaken his hand.
He's the authority, isn't he? Let's be honest.
It's like you look after you create all of those Beatle items and some of the clothes. He's got this new book coming out, which I expect he'll talk about, which looks phenomenal. It's just, you know, it's like a what's name off the bucket list for me to be involved in that, because I know, and he may probably get involved at some point, that Greg Bissonette, who obviously drums with him now, was kind of like, who's doing the drumming for you? You know, he was thrilled up when he met Gary a little while ago. He said, who's the guy on drums doing it? And Gary said, "Oh no, it's okay. It's in good hands, you know." But so maybe if he goes to the States, he'll do it with Greg, and of course, ticket sales will probably go through the roof. But for me to be involved in it here in England and Europe, I'm going to go to some other drum shows in Europe. It's amazing.
Oh,
Yeah, amazing.
well, I'm really looking forward to it, and I think it's going to be a successful tour for you. Again, something totally different. It's not a masterclass. It's not a clinic. It's a I don't know how you can describe what it actually is. You know,
Yeah, exactly. And I tried to then, and that was kind of a ramble, but because now you see why it's quite hard to. Because a friend of mine, Stuart Bruce, who engineers loads of stuff, and every year he's on the "Do They Know It's Christmas" song
mm,
because he engineered that.
yeah.
So when he watched that video next year, the guy in a flat cap on the desk, that's Stuart. He's done loads of different stuff with loads of different people. He's worked with Elvin Jones. He's worked with loads of
Oh,
people.
wow.
And he was going, "Oh, and even he was going, that sounds blooming interesting. That you doing one around here?" I said, "Well, there's one date we still need to fix. That might be in this area." He's like, "Yeah, that sounds quite interesting." And some other drummers have gone, "Oh, Ringo again. Here we go." I said, "Look, okay, no, fine. You know, the Beatle thing can be overcooked sometimes." I said, "But you know, how many session gigs are you getting?" "Oh, not enough." I said, "Tell you what, come along and just get a few of these ideas in your bag and see why, if you took on some of them, only some of them, they might help you with your playing." You know, that sounds like I was patronizing. I wasn't. It was having fun over a beer, but they were like, "Really?" I said, "Well, seriously." I said, "It's not, there will be some drummy things. It's not just always Ticket to Ride again. It's like how he played the hi-hat, how he played the snare, how he felt the backbeat. This is all stuff that later on people would talk about, Hal Blaine and other people we know of, but people don't look at Ringo as being like that. You know, they see him as just a member of one of the biggest bands, if not the biggest band in the world.
Hmm.
That's all they see it as, and it's which is lovely, but it's kind of it kind of signs him off
Yeah.
as, oh yeah, he was a drummer in the Beatles. It's like there's more to it than that. So, you know, playing slightly behind the beat, a slight swing in his hi-hat, all these things, same as Charlie Watts, all these things that are really important that Porcaro would nick, that Steve Gadd would nick later on and become clinicians and bigger names in their own right. Whereas Ringo, as I say, keeps getting put back, but he was doing a lot of that stuff very early on.
Yeah.
And one thing that always makes me laugh is when I play the volume that he played on those early songs, people go, "No, he didn't." It's like, well, next time you hear that snare drum, that's a rim shot on every stroke.
Yeah.
Listen to how his hi-hats are, because it had to get bounced down 3 or 4 times.
Yeah.
So if
Yeah.
you sort of mind it, like he'd on top of the pops, looking like he was hardly in the drums, then nothing would happen by the time all those harmonies have been put on and bounced down. He's playing hard.
Yeah.
And when you see those early clips from like 63 up to about 66, where they stop bothering because they just can't be asked anymore because of the screaming. But you see those sort of first couple of years and he's playing drums, the kit is moving like
Oh,
this.
yeah.
He's giving it rock all, you know, and it's just like, it's so exciting. I used to play at BIM. I used to play Long Tall Sally from Washington, DC, where they're playing in the middle. And he's doing a thing on there, and it's on YouTube, and the cymbal stands rocking, and the bass. I said, check out that energy. And you think they were a boring band? Like, check, this is rock and roll, man. This is basically what Led Zeppelin would do a few years later, but with bigger amps. You know, they were already trying to do this, but with weedy little amps and all that. But that excitement, it's like, yeah, this is what Ringo, he was kind of like Keith Moon said, he was the first rock drummer, even with the hair going. And he said, before me, he was doing it. He inspired Keith to do it. So it's kind of like, you know, it's kind of cool.
It's you've whetted my appetite, and I'm really looking forward to it. So look, Rob,
Right.
thanks for this, mate. I really appreciate it, and I'm looking forward to catching up in a month or so.
Right.
So yeah, thanks for giving up your time so generously. Happy New Year once again,
And to you.
and I'll be seeing you very shortly. So there we go.
We'll have
Thanks,
a beer.
Rob. Take care, mate. Thank
Cheers,
you.
mate. Bye.